People always think stories like mine begin with sadness or anger. But the truth is, everything started beautifully. So beautifully that if someone had told me my life would one day end up in a courtroom with my husband's pregnant ex-wife, I would have laughed so loud the windows would shake. Back then, my days started with warm coffee, sunlight through the windows, and Mark smiling at me like I was the only woman in the world. He was the type of man who opened my car door, warmed my food, and told me 100 times a day that I was his blessing. If love had a face, I thought it was his. We lived in a small house with blue curtains and a garden where Mark said he wanted to plant onions, but never did. I used to joke that if he planted them, maybe he would stop crying whenever we watched sad movies. "Don't blame me," he always said, wiping his eyes. "It's the onions inside my heart." We laughed at almost everything. Our neighbors even called us the happy couple. I didn't know the same mouth that kissed me every morning would one day call another woman baby. I didn't know the same hands that held me when I cried would hold someone else in the dark. I didn't know the same feet that walked toward me on our wedding day would walk back into his ex-wife's house as if he never left. But life has a way of turning love stories into lessons. And I was about to learn mine the hard way. It all began one ordinary Saturday morning. The type of morning where you think nothing bad can happen because the sky is too blue and the birds are singing too happily. I had made pancakes, burnt ones, because I was terrible at flipping, and the poor frying pan suffered every time. Mark laughed when he saw them. "My love," he said, "if these pancakes were humans, we would be arrested for harming them." I threw a spoon at him, and we both laughed. He ate them anyway, telling me he would rather eat burnt pancakes from me than perfect food from a stranger. That sentence stayed in my heart for a long time. And it hurt twice as much when he broke it. Later that afternoon, Mark said he needed to step out to settle something. He said it so casually that I didn't think anything of it. I even gave him a kiss on the cheek and told him not to forget to buy plantain chips on his way home, because I knew he would. Hours went by. The sun went down. My plantain chips didn't come. I called him, no answer. I texted him, no reply. By midnight, fear had started tapping my heart gently. By 2 a.m., fear was banging loudly. I must have made at least 50 calls before he finally picked up with a shaky voice. "Hey, babe," he whispered. I'm at the hospital." My heart froze. "What happened? Are you okay? Should I come there?" "No," he said too quickly. "I'm fine, it's someone else. She needed help." "She? Who was she?" Before I could ask, he added, "I'll explain when I get home." But when he did come home the next morning, he didn't explain anything. He just hugged me tightly, like he was holding on to a secret that was drowning him. "I love you," he whispered into my hair. "Please believe that." I believed it. Oh, how foolishly I believed it. The next few weeks were strange. Mark became quiet, distracted. Sometimes he looked at me like he wanted to confess something, but then he swallowed the words and walked away. Then everything exploded one sunny afternoon when I went to the supermarket and ran into Hannah, his ex-wife. We were never friends, but we never had problems. She always acted polite, even when her eyes clearly didn't like me. But that day, she wasn't just standing in the aisle. She was standing there with a big belly. A belly that wasn't there 2 months earlier. And when her eyes met mine, she didn't hide it. She didn't move. She didn't even smile. Instead, she rubbed her stomach slowly and said, "Oh, I guess Mark didn't tell you." My heart fell to my feet. What do you mean?" I asked with shaking lips. She looked at me with the smile of someone who enjoyed watching another person break. "I'm pregnant," she said, "and the baby is Mark's." The whole world went silent. My breath left my body. My hands went numb. I stood there like a statue made from heartbreak. And before I could speak, she leaned closer and whispered, "And don't worry, he said it was a mistake." A mistake. A mistake with a heartbeat. A mistake with legs and arms, and a due date. That was the day everything began to crumble. Mark tried to deny it at first. He said he was drunk, confused, upset, lonely. He gave me enough excuses to fill a notebook. I cried for days. I prayed. I begged. I screamed. I thought maybe I could forgive him. But he forgot one small thing. The truth always comes out. And it came out in court. When the judge read the results, when everyone turned to look at me, when Mark said he didn't mean to do it. That was the day I made a decision. A decision that shocked the entire courtroom. A decision people still talk about today. Because that was the day. I did the unthinkable. But before I could open my mouth, before I could reveal what I had already planned, someone walked into the courtroom. And what happened next changed everything. And that is where I will stop for now, because the next part is the beginning of Chapter 2. But for now, Chapter 1 must end in an extreme moment. Just as everyone turned toward the courtroom door to see who had arrived. Just as my heart started racing. The person stepped forward, holding a document that would shake the entire case. Holding a truth that none of us were ready for. And when I saw their face clearly, my mouth fell open. Because it was the last person I ever expected to walk into that room. The courtroom door slammed against the wall so hard that even the judge jumped in her seat. Every head turned. Every whisper stopped. Even Hannah froze with her hand on her swollen stomach. The person who walked in didn't rush. They didn't panic. They walked slowly, like someone carrying a truth that could burn the whole building down. It was Michael, my husband's older brother. A man who left town years ago after a big family quarrel. A man who promised never to return. A man who never attended family events, birthdays, weddings, or burials. And yet here he was. He stood tall, dressed in a neat gray suit, holding a brown envelope so thick it looked like it had eaten several other envelopes. Mark's face drained of all color. "Michael," he whispered, his voice cracking, "what are you doing here?" But Michael didn't even look at him. Instead, he walked straight toward the judge and placed the envelope gently on her desk. "Your Honor," he said with a calm but sharp voice, "the truth in that envelope affects this entire case." The whole courtroom gasped. Even I felt my heart climb into my throat. The judge raised a brow. "And you are?" "Michael Bennett," he said. "The defendant's brother." The judge nodded slowly. "And what is this?" she asked, tapping the envelope. "Evidence," Michael replied. "Evidence that proves Mark is not telling the whole story." Mark's hands trembled. I saw sweat rolling down his face like rain on a window. "Michael," he barked, his voice cracking. "Stop this, you don't know what you're doing." But Michael's eyes stayed on the judge. "Your Honor," he said, "I believe the court should see it." The judge opened the envelope. My heart beat so loud I thought people could hear it. The papers inside were long, clipped together, with photographs attached to some of the pages. The judge started reading. Her eyes widened. Hannah's mouth dropped open. Mark looked like he wanted to vanish into the floor. I wanted to scream, "What is happening?" But my voice failed me. The judge looked up slowly. "This," she said, her voice almost a whisper, "this changes everything." I held my breath, waiting for her to explain. But before she could speak, before she could even lift the papers for everyone to see, Michael turned around and looked straight at me. "Grace," he said softly, "you deserve to know the full truth, and you will." My knees grew weak. Because something in his voice told me. This wasn't just about Mark cheating. This wasn't just about a baby. This was bigger, darker, dangerous. And then, with everyone watching, Michael finally revealed the first slice of the truth. "Mark didn't just sleep with Hannah," he said. The entire room gasped. "He has been seeing her for months, long before she got pregnant." A woman behind me screamed, "Blood of Jesus." The judge smacked her gavel. "Order." But Michael wasn't finished. And he wasn't helping her at the hospital because she needed help. He paused, his jaw tightening. He was helping her because they were planning something together. I felt something explode in my chest. "What?" I whispered. Mark stepped forward. "Michael, stop, please." But it was too late. Michael looked right at me and said the words that made my whole body go cold. "They plan to take everything from you." Something in my heart shattered so loudly that I thought everyone heard the sound. Tears rushed into my eyes. I shook my head slowly. "Take everything." Michael nodded. "Your house, your savings, your inheritance, all of it." My breath left me. The judge leaned forward. "Explain this, Mr. Bennett." And Michael did. He explained how Mark and Hannah had secretly been meeting for months, how they had been planning to make Hannah pregnant so Mark could use the child as leverage, how they planned to force me financially into supporting them, how Mark wanted to get access to my late father's estate, which was legally under my name. Each sentence felt like a hammer hitting my heart, breaking piece after piece. Mark began crying. "It's not like that," he shouted. I was confused. I didn't mean for everything to go that far." Hannah stood up with anger on her face. "That's a lie," she snapped. "Michael, you just hate your brother. You're trying to destroy him." But Michael didn't even turn to look at her. He just said, "Your Honor, all the evidence is inside that file." The judge flipped through more pages. Pictures, bank transactions, messages, recordings, everything. Everything that proved my husband didn't just betray me. He planned it. Suddenly, my legs gave way. I felt the room spin. The walls moved. The floor rose and fell like waves. I grabbed the bench beside me to keep from falling. The bailiff rushed toward me. "Ma'am, are you okay?" But I couldn't answer, because all I could hear was the echo of Michael's words. "They plan to take everything from you." My mind went back to all the nights Mark came home smelling like someone else's perfume. All the excuses. All the lies. All the secret phone calls. All the strange late-night outings. I had married a man who planned to destroy me. I felt my heart break, slowly, painfully, completely. The judge closed the file. "Mr. Mark Bennett," she said, looking directly at him, "this court will need time to review this new evidence, but you have a lot to explain." Mark collapsed into his seat, crying into his hands. Hannah looked like she wanted to disappear. The judge stood up to leave and announced, "This court is adjourned until Monday." Everyone began to move, murmuring, whispering, staring. Some stared at Mark. Some stared at Hannah. But most stared at me, waiting to see how I would react. Waiting to see if I would scream, cry, faint, or walk out quietly. But I did none of those things. I stood up with the strength of a woman who had survived storms before. I walked to the middle of the courtroom, took a deep breath, and looked straight at Mark. He lifted his eyes slowly, like a child caught stealing. "Grace," he whispered. I said nothing. I just stared at him with eyes full of pain and fire. Because everyone thought I would break. Everyone thought I would run away crying. But they didn't know something. They didn't know what I had already done. They didn't know what I was planning next. They didn't know the unthinkable decision I had made even before stepping inside that courtroom. A decision that would shock not only Mark and Hannah, but even the judge herself. I opened my mouth to speak. But right at that moment, a loud scream came from outside the courtroom. Everyone turned. The scream grew louder. People rushed to the hallway. The judge stopped walking. The bailiff ran to the door. Mark grabbed the bench, terrified. I hurried forward with my heart pounding. And when I reached the doorway, what I saw made me freeze completely. Because lying on the floor, holding her stomach, wailing in pain, was Hannah, blood everywhere. And beside her was a piece of paper that someone slipped under her hand. A piece of paper with one sentence written on it. You cannot hide the rest of the truth. And that was the moment everything turned darker. Everything became dangerous. The scream echoed through the hallway like something from a nightmare. People rushed around, papers fell from lawyers' hands, security guards shouted, and the whole courthouse became a whirlwind of panic. But all I could see was Hannah on the cold floor, clutching her stomach, her dress soaked in bright red blood. Her eyes were wild with fear. Her mouth trembled, and beside her hand was that single piece of paper. You cannot hide the rest of the truth. My heart pounded so loud it drowned every other sound. Hannah, Mark shouted, falling to his knees beside her. Oh God, Hannah, breathe, stay with me. For a moment, I just stood there, frozen. I didn't know whether to run forward or step back. This was the same woman who had slept with my husband, lied to me, mocked me, and planned to destroy me. And yet, as she screamed in pain, something inside me shifted. The anger I had carried for weeks, the betrayal that burned in my chest, the shame I felt in court, all of it backed away for a moment. Because before me wasn't the woman who stole my marriage. It was a human being. A pregnant mother. A woman scared for her life, and the life inside her. I dropped to my knees beside her. Move, I said firmly to Mark, pushing his shaking hands away so I could get closer. Let me help her. He stared at me like I had just spoken in another language. Grace, he whispered. Why, after everything I did to you? But I didn't answer. I just pressed my hands gently on the bleeding area and shouted to the nearest officer. Call an ambulance, now. My voice filled the hallway, loud and strong. The officer nodded and ran. People stood around, watching the scene unfold like something from a movie. And still, that small paper beside her hand kept pulling my eye. What truth? What else were they hiding? Who put the note there? Whoever it was, they must have been close enough to hurt her, close enough to slip that paper, yet blend into the crowd unnoticed. Hannah, I said softly, wiping sweat from her forehead. Look at me, breathe slowly. Her eyes met mine, full of shock. Why are you helping me? She whispered through the pain. Because a child is involved, I said, and because I'm not like you too. Tears fell from her eyes. Not tears of guilt. Tears of confusion. Like she couldn't understand why someone she had betrayed so deeply would still help her. The ambulance arrived within minutes. Paramedics lifted her carefully onto a stretcher. She cried out, clutching my hand. Don't let him come near me, she whispered. Who? I asked quickly. Mark. No, she shook her head, trembling. Not Mark, someone else, someone who. But her voice faded as the paramedics pushed her out of the building. The doors closed behind them. And just like that, the hallway went quiet again. The judge ordered everyone back inside for emergency questioning. The courtroom felt heavier than before. Even the lights seemed dimmer. Michael stood near the corner, his arms crossed, eyes scanning the room like he was expecting trouble. Mark sat with his head in his hands, whispering prayers he should have prayed before destroying our marriage. I sat in the front row, staring at the judge as she spoke. This situation has become more serious than a simple custody or paternity case. We now have a potential threat, violence, and a new unknown factor. She lifted the note. Does anyone recognize this handwriting? No one answered. Does anyone know who would want to harm Ms. Hannah or intimidate the court? Still silence. Then Michael stepped forward. Your Honor, he said carefully, I believe I know who wrote that note. Everyone turned. Mark lifted his head slowly. Even I felt my heart skip. Who? The judge asked. Michael sighed, looking directly at Mark. Mom. The whole room gasped. I nearly stood up. Mark jumped to his feet. What? How? Why would she? But Michael cut him off. Because she wanted to force the truth out. She knew what you and Hannah were planning. She told me everything before she left town last month. I watched Mark's face crumble. "You're lying," he whispered weakly. "Mom would never." "She would," Michael said. "And she did. She told me she was tired of covering for you. She said if you didn't confess, the truth would destroy us." The judge frowned deeply. "This is becoming a family war," she said. "But we must return to the facts. Mr. Michael Bennett, you brought evidence. Please explain the rest." Michael nodded and picked up one of the documents from the envelope. "Your Honor, what no one knows is this. Mark and Hannah weren't only planning to take Grace's property. They were also planning to move abroad using her money. They thought that if Grace entrusted Mark with the estate funds, he could transfer everything quietly." The room buzzed with whispers. Mark's legs gave out again. He fell back into his seat, shaking. "Grace, please," he cried. "I wasn't thinking straight, I was." "Stop," I said quietly. He froze. I stood up slowly. Everyone turned to me, including the judge. And that was the moment. The moment I had been building toward since the beginning. The moment I finally revealed the unthinkable thing I had done. I stepped forward and faced the entire courtroom. "Your Honor," I began, "before I walked into this courthouse today, I made a decision that shocked even me." The judge raised a brow. "Go on." I took a deep breath, lifted my chin, and said, "I have already transferred my entire inheritance into a trust fund, under the name of the unborn child." A loud gasp filled the room like thunder. Mark grabbed his chest. Hannah's mother screamed. Michael's jaw dropped. Even the judge leaned back in shock. "You what?" Mark choked. I nodded calmly. "That child did not ask to be born. That child did not participate in any plan. That child is innocent. And I refuse to let an unborn baby suffer because two adults made foolish choices." Tears filled my eyes, but they didn't fall. "Your Honor," I continued, "whether Mark and Hannah lied, cheated, or plotted against me, the child deserves a future. So I placed my inheritance in a trust the parents cannot touch. The court will appoint a guardian. The money will only be used for the baby's education, health, and future needs." The room went silent. Dead silent. Even Mark stopped breathing. The judge stared at me for a long moment before speaking softly. "Mrs. Grace Bennett, you have done something extraordinary today." I took a breath, steady and strong. "I didn't do it because I'm a saint," I said. "I did it because I want to end the cycle of revenge. I don't want this child to grow up in bitterness. This is my closure." Mark burst into tears, falling to his knees. "Grace, forgive me, I don't deserve you." I looked at him. This man I once loved. This man who betrayed me. This man who thought he could break me. And I finally said the words I should have said months ago. "You're right, you don't deserve me." The judge spoke again. "With this new information, the court rules that Grace is no longer financially tied to Mark. The trust fund is legally valid, and Mark will be responsible for child support and medical bills. The divorce proceedings will begin immediately. Court is adjourned." And just like that, it was done. The chapter of my marriage closed. When I stepped outside the courthouse, the wind felt different, softer, lighter, like freedom itself was hugging me. Michael walked out behind me. "Grace," he said, stopping me gently, "that was the bravest thing I have ever seen anyone do." I smiled weakly. It wasn't bravery, it was peace. He shook his head. "No, it was strength, the kind very few people have." I looked up at the sky and let the sun warm my face. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if Hannah's child would ever know what I did. I didn't know if Mark would ever grow up. But I knew one thing. I had chosen kindness over revenge, strength over bitterness, peace over war. And that was enough. Because sometimes, the most unthinkable thing a person can do is forgive when they have every right to hate. That was the day I learned. Heartbreak doesn't destroy strong people. It transforms them into something greater. Thanks for watching. Kindly drop your comment about this video. And please subscribe to this channel for more interesting stories.